This show is a part of the podcast network of the Walled Garden Philosophical Society, an international community of philosophers and seekers dedicated to the pursuit of truth, wisdom, virtue, and the divine, wherever they may be found. To find out more, go to thewalledgarden.com. Hey everybody, welcome to part 2 of my episode on Seneca's middle way approach to philosophy. And today we're going to be reading verses 4 to 6 of the 5th letter of Seneca's epistles. And he says some similar ideas to what we read in 1 to 3, but there's also some key differences here which I think can help us to better understand this kind of middle way approach that he takes to the philosophical life and the philosophical career, you might say, or the endeavor. So he says the following: "The first thing which philosophy undertakes to give is fellow feeling with all men. In other words, sympathy and sociability." So let's just stop there for a second, because I think that's a really beautiful picture of philosophy. It undertakes to give us a fellow feeling with all men. And this is an idea that definitely runs throughout all of the Stoic philosophers, because they had that cosmopolitan perspective. You know, this idea that we really do share something very important and very in common with all human beings, which is this spark of divinity. You know, no matter who you are, this is something that we share in common as a species of human beings. And I really, really like that. You see that in Marcus Aurelius's philosophy as well, where he says that, hey, remember that today you're going to face ignorant people and annoying people and all kinds of people who are going to frustrate you, but always remember that we're supposed to work together with each other. Remember that we are not without each other. And I can't help but think that these very ideas that are embedded within the Stoic philosophy helped to develop what we now see in the West, particularly as individual sovereignty. You know, this idea that everybody, no matter who you are or what you've done, everybody contains that spark of divinity, that value as a human being. And that's a beautiful way to look at philosophy as well. It's a key understanding that you have to have from the start that what we're all involved in here is a game that we all have to play together, and we all have to get along with each other. So philosophy should help you to do that rather than alienating you from the society. So he goes on to say, "We part company with our promise if we are unlike other men. We must see to it that the means by which we wish to draw admiration be not absurd and odious. Our motto, as you know, is live according to nature. But it is quite contrary to nature to be torturing the body, to hate unlaboured elegance, to be dirty on purpose, to eat food that is not only plain but disgusting and forbidding. You know, just as it is a sign of luxury to seek out dainties, so is it madness to avoid that which is customary and can be purchased at no great price." So like I mentioned in the previous episode, it seems like Seneca is kind of continuing his jab at the Cynic philosophers here, who definitely would have been all about the business of removing themselves from the society and the customs and eating food that is terrible and really not keeping up their appearance. And Seneca is saying it's not the way. It's not the right way to go about it. And he also brings in his philosophy, Stoicism, to kind of back him up on this point here, saying, look, if we say that we're going to live according to nature, look at all the things that people do to make themselves seem like philosophers that are completely contrary to nature. And one thing that we know that the Stoics felt was that, you know, it was in accordance with nature to want to have that feeling of commonality with our fellow human beings, right? Because at the end of the day, we are social creatures. And he says that, you know, philosophy is supposed to encourage sociability, you know, because we are social creatures. We do need each other. And to act in such a way that removes yourself from the herd or removes yourself from the society is to act against nature and against your nature. It's taking something away from yourself that you actually need. And so you can see how what Seneca is saying here makes a lot of sense. As a philosopher, you know, you really should be aiming, or even if you're just practicing philosophy, you should be aiming to contribute to and improve your culture, not remove yourself from it. So he goes on to say, philosophy calls for plain living, but not for penance, and we may perfectly well be plain and neat at the same time. This is the mean of which I approve. Our life should observe a happy medium between the ways of a sage and the ways of the world at large. All men should admire it, but they should understand it also. Okay, so this idea here, or this passage, really has been one of the more influential passages that I've taken away from Seneca's writings, which is that people should admire our way of life, but they should also understand it. That's such a useful statement, because what it's saying is that your philosophy and the way that you live your life needs to walk a very tight line between being different enough from the mob that it is worthy of admiration, but also that it is not so different from the mob that nobody understands and is willing to pay attention. And there's a very reasonable argument that you might have against this kind of view, which is to say that surely the philosophical idea or the principle or the way that you live your life shouldn't be superseded by the opinion of the mob, right? Surely, the philosophy is valuable in itself. And Seneca goes on to kind of reckon with this objection, and he says the following. Well then, shall we act like other men? Shall there be no distinction between ourselves and the world? Yes, there should be a very great one. Let men find that we are unlike the common herd if they look closely. If they visit us at home, they should admire us rather than our household appointments. He is a great man who uses earthenware dishes as if they were silver, but he is equally great who uses silver as if it were earthenware. It is the sign of an unstable mind not to be able to endure riches. So here we see what Seneca's done is he's again drawn for us that dichotomy between the inner world and the outer world. And he's suggesting that, what happens in your outer world really doesn't matter at all. So you might as well conform your outer world to the general society so that people can make sense of the way you live, right? And can be comfortable in your presence. However, what's most important is how you are on the inside. And that's why he says here, they should see that you are quite different from the mob if they look closely. So philosophy is an internal game. You want people to see that there's something quite unique about the way that you show up in the world, but you don't want them to get that impression from the things that are sitting around you. You want them to get that from the kind of person who you are. And so I just think that this is such an interesting perspective from Seneca, this middle way of philosophy. And I find it to be really useful in the way that I approach my practice of philosophy. And I really think that it's useful for anybody who's practicing philosophy to meditate on the things that they are doing which are just for show, and the things that they are doing which are genuinely for the purpose of improving their character and the way that they show up in the world. So I hope that these 2 episodes on Seneca's middle way approach have been helpful to you, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.